Hello everyone and welcome to the Tradcast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is episode number 8, and on today's show, my teammate Justin Vickers and I are going to be doing a part 2 discussion on some wintertime activities which can help build the foundation for a successful next season. Grab your favorite cold beverage, we're jumping right in to today's show. Alright everyone, welcome to today's Tradcast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is February 14th, Valentine's Day, and it's another cold, snowy day up here in northern New York. My truck thermometer is currently showing 13 degrees, and they're saying it's supposed to warm up into the low 20s, so hopefully it will get there. In this week's episode, myself and teammate Justin Vickers are going to be discussing a few more wintertime chores that all hunters can do. Some things that you want to start thinking about this time of year to get you ready in preparation for the next season. But before we jump into that discussion, I want to just give everybody a couple of updates on things that's going on up here. Like I said, obviously we've got a lot of snow this past week. Seems like every day it keeps snowing a couple, 2, 3, 4 inches. The temperatures have been still very, very cold. Last night was down to like minus 25 degrees, below zero. So it's been very, very cold, very snowy. The deer movement just continues to be shut off from what I can see. I'm actually headed up to one of my properties, to a couple of my properties today, to check a few trail cameras, because I still think I've got cameras in a few spots where I actually think there has been a little bit of movement the last couple of weeks despite the significant snow. But most of the deer movement is, very, very confined right now up here to just pretty much, your cedar swamps and your really, really dense areas where deer, yard come wintertime. Other than that, there's really much no deer activity whatsoever right now. I tell you what, we really need spring to come as soon as we can, as soon as possible, because our northern New York deer herd here is really starting to feel the effects of winter, and I can just imagine it's also being hard on the turkeys and all the other animals. So hopefully we'll get a break in the weather here soon, and spring starts to make its appearance. But I also wanted to give everybody another update. The fact that if you want to get more updated content from what's going on with our team on a more regular basis, we do have Facebook. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter page. On Facebook, you can find us at Vantage Point Outdoors. Simply search Vantage Point Outdoors in the top search bar. We should pop up. And on Twitter, you can find us at VPO Pros. So if you want to follow us on a more regular basis, check us out on social media. I've been continuing to shoot my traditional bows every day. I have not missed one day since November 13th. Even if it's just shooting a couple, 2, 3 arrows, late at night before I go to bed. I've shot my bow every day, and I just think that's a very, very important, aspect of traditional archery and traditional bow hunting. I think it's important to shoot your traditional bow every day. Even if it's just a few shots, just string your bow, shoot a few arrows, at least get a few shots in each day. And another update that I had for you is, now the first 7, the podcast is now available in an audio-only version. The podcast is now available on Podomatic, which is a website. And if you go on to Podomatic.com, you can search the Tradcast. We'll pop up there. That's our host site for the podcast. And I've also got the podcast linked over to iTunes. So anybody who's out there on iTunes and wants to start listening to the podcast in an audio-only version, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, or you can follow us on Podomatic. So we now have the podcast available in an audio-only version, and I have uploaded all of the past episodes, so we are up to date on the audio version as well. So that's a pretty, that was a pretty exciting development this week. I'd been wanting to do it right from the outset of the podcast, but I finally got some time this week at night. One of the nights this past week, I created a account on Podomatic and synced it over to iTunes and got everything working. So I think it's going to be good to have the podcast in an audio-only version. And one last update that I've got for everybody is yesterday I ordered a new longbow, and I wanted to have a second longbow as a backup more than anything else, just in case, heaven forbid, something happens to my whip. I wanted to have a second longbow ready to go, because the last thing I'd want to have is to be in the middle of a hunting season and have something happen to my longbow and then have to scramble around for another bow. So I ordered the Dwyer Endeavor. I called up Susie at Dwyer over there. She's one of the co-owners, and they had one Endeavor left in stock, which was right-handed and at 53 pounds, which was pretty much what I was looking for, anything from 53 to 56 pounds. They had the one left. I called up Susie. She emailed me over, several photos of the bow to make sure that it was, a color scheme that I liked. And I tell you what, it's a beautiful looking bow. I ordered it right there in the spot, and it should have been shipped today. So hopefully in the next 3 or 4 days, my new Dwyer Endeavor longbow will show up, and I can give you guys an update next week on the podcast. But now we're going to jump into a discussion I recently had with teammate Justin Vickers, where we discuss some more wintertime activities that all hunters can do that can help carry you through the next season and increase your chances the next season. So let's jump right into that discussion. All right, everyone. Like I said, this week I'm going to be talking to my teammate again, Justin Vickers, and we're just going to talk a little bit about some more postseason activities that everybody can do to get ready for the next season, and also break that cabin fever during these winter months. How's it going today, Justin?
Hey, Chad. It's going pretty well. Trying to stay warm, I guess. How are you doing?
Pretty much the same. We were actually just talking a few minutes ago, and I think it's -7 here currently, with probably wind chills anywhere from 40 to 50 below. So yeah, trying to stay warm is probably the #1 priority this time of year.
Yeah, I'd say you're a little bit colder than I am down here. We're probably, our regular temperature is about 15 above, and I'd say wind chill's got to be 0 or maybe -5 today. But it's pretty nice. I mean, with the sun, it's been pretty nice. But we'll get through it a few more weeks.
Yeah, we're certainly on the downhill slide of things for the wintertime, but that always seems to be the one area where I kind of have like a one-up on everybody as being colder than everybody else, and that's kind of like the one area where I don't really want to have the one-up. So I know, like, I posted a picture on Facebook the other night. I think it was Friday night. It was -21 degrees up here.
Wow.
Basic air temperature.
Basic temperature. I'd say Saranac Lake area, your area up there in Messina, is probably one of the coldest places in North America besides, probably Fargo or something, the Dakotas.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would agree with you. It's as cold up here as I see posted anywhere else.
Oh, yeah.
But on this week's show, I wanted to bring you back on and have another discussion with you, because on episode number 5, we actually we talked a little bit about some wintertime activities and some things that everybody can do this time of year to not only break up the cabin fever, but also just things that you can scratch off the list now to get ready for next season. And we kind of, that show went, we basically ran out of time on that show, and we didn't get to cover everything that we wanted to talk about. So I know that we both wanted to do another discussion today and just recover some topics that we think is going to be important to everybody out there to, like I said, not only break the cabin fever, but to get ready for the next hunting season. So what do you say we dive into that?
Sounds good to me, Chad.
Okay. Well, Justin, I figured we could start out by just giving the listeners a few updates on some things that we've each been doing. Just a couple of the updates that I had for everybody was, and I already mentioned this in the first half of the show, so I won't take too long to talk about it, but I was able to get the podcast in an audio-only version now, which obviously I think is going to help, get it to a bigger audience, because, most people don't have the time or the ability to, to watch 50-minute, hour-long, YouTube videos. So I thought that getting the podcast in an audio version was certainly an important thing to do. And I know I've talked to you a little bit about this already, but I've actually got a new longbow that I got coming. Should be here in a couple of days. I ended up ordering the Dwyer Endeavor, and so I'm looking forward to getting that. And what have you got going on out there?
Well, we're still in the heart of winter up here. I got rabbits on my property chewing the bark off the trees. Probably all the wild animals here are, just wishing that they could be in a heated space like we can. But for the most part, getting through this winter, I've been shooting my brand new Hoyt Carbon Spider that I picked up, and shooting really well with it. We got an indoor 3D league that we shoot at Northern Duchess Archery here in Red Hook. And, basically trying to round out the winter like that keeps our practice in and, gets us prepped for going outside in the springtime, shooting the 3D shoots all summer long, and just prepping us for the upcoming hunting season. That's why I do it, and it's really just to keep my skills tuned in to shooting the 3D, and I feel when I'm out there hunting that I can pretty much part hairs instead of just shooting at a few inch circle and getting a few inch group going and saying that that's good enough. I take a little bit more pride into it than that, and like we talked about on episode 5, I haven't ruled out the idea of trying traditional and going traditional. I appreciate you calling me onto the show here as your teammate and keeping the discussion broad. And like I'm shooting compound, you're shooting traditional, so we're just getting the 3D stuff going this winter. I'm shooting the pro class at our shop. Of course, I'm a sponsored shooter through our shop, so I take the opportunity to shoot the pro class, and I'm doing fairly well. I believe I'm in second place at the moment. We're about halfway through, and it's just a good time. I do it for fun, and I do it for just keeping my muscles trained, and keep everything prepped for the hunting season.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was actually going to. I wanted to have you touch a little bit on, the fact that I think you said you were second overall there, shooting in your league. I certainly wasn't, that level of a compound shooter. I was a decent shot, but, certainly probably wouldn't have been, competing for any kind of, league titles or best in class or anything. But, yeah, I think there's no reason, I think, like you mentioned, keeping the information broad, I think that's an important aspect, because even though this podcast is ultimately aimed at the traditional side of things, there's no doubt that there's some things that every archer, whether you're shooting compound or traditional, can learn from talking to other archers. And I think having you, being a regular, guest on the show is going to be an important thing for everybody. And I saw that picture that you actually sent me over. I'm actually going to be putting that on the Vantage Point Outdoors Facebook page here pretty soon. That picture you sent me there, you've got basically where the rabbits are basically eating bark off the sides of the trees. And I know you and I were talking about it before we started recording. But this time of year, I know we've got in the woods, we've got easily, I would say, anywhere from 3 to 3.5 feet of snow in the woods. And, like we talked about, it just seems like, how do these animals how do they survive this, during these winter months when the conditions can just be, so incredibly brutal,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen deer tracks underneath my deck behind my house. They get a lot closer to the homes in the wintertime, just searching for food. They're eating everybody's shrubs. I threw some old carrots that I had out in my backyard, and I went out this morning. This was just last night, and I went out this morning, and they were already gone. So, I'd say this bitter cold winter, we haven't had a winter this bad down here in the Hudson Valley in quite a few years. Ever since probably I've lived here for the last 10 years, and this winter has held on. Started early January, and it's really brutally cold this year. So there's no doubt that the animals are feeling it. And as I can see, I've never noticed rabbits to eat bark right off the trees. So that just goes to show that the animals are definitely feeling the cold.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that either up here. I'm out in the woods, usually, not a lot, but a little bit this time of year, checking my trail cameras and stuff, mostly because I do run those year round. But I can't recall ever seeing where animals are eating bark off the trees. But anyways, that kind of basically, that's a good transition into the first topic that I know we wanted to talk about, and that's predator hunting, which primarily for us here in New York State, the biggest focus when it comes to predator hunting this time of year is usually in terms of coyotes. I haven't done any coyote hunting, actually. It's something that I want to get into a little bit more in the future. The biggest thing for me probably has been the biggest deterrent, like we talked about before, is, just the winters up here are, so brutal that you almost physically can't be out into the woods, hunting coyotes much when it's, 10 below zero and 50, and 50 below wind chills. I mean, I just don't know how a guy even, stomachs being out in the woods and hunting in those conditions. But, it is something that I do want to get into a little bit more, into the coming years, because I know that it can certainly have a big impact on, helping, your deer herd, your turkeys, and all other animals. You always want to try to keep that balance, between the predators, between your predator species, and your, and your deer and other wildlife. Now, Justin, I know you've done a little bit of coyote hunting down there in central New York. I thought maybe you could discuss that a little bit for everybody.
Yeah, sure. I've had some luck. I killed the one big male there in Herkimer County while I was deer hunting, just basically still hunting, and happened to walk upon it. But for the most part, I don't really start predator hunting until the deer season is over with. I may have a chance to take one out during the deer season while I'm hunting. However, most of my calling or, my friends from up north in Herkimer County run them with the dogs and the GPS collars there. So that's a whole different type of hunting. I like to call them, like you said, it's brutally cold now, and it's really tough. There's 3 feet of snow on the ground. I have a feeling that even the predators are kind of just huddled up and saving their energy for better temperatures and better conditions to run on, because the snow is really, it's been so cold without any melts or warm ups at all to make this the coyote is able to run on top of the snow and get some good traction and take down some other prey that they need to survive on. So it's got to be hard for them. I haven't really hunted. I haven't gone out and done many sets at all this winter. It's been too cold, for one thing. You can't really sit out there too long. And the other thing is, I think they're just hunkered down. You really got to be close to them to be able to have them hear your calls and have them come in. But, I spent a little bit of time in January up in Herkimer County. We ran them with the dogs. We were pretty successful with that. Another group that runs up there too that I'm friends with has killed almost 40 coyotes running them with the dogs. So, now it's, like you said, it's getting 3-4 feet of snow even up in the Mohawk Valley there. And, it's just getting tough for everybody. So we do a little bit of it. We try and get them early, you know, before the snow really gets deep. And if we get any meltdowns or nice weather, I'll for sure be out calling, doing some sets around. I have another piece of property that's a pheasant farm. They do raise and release pheasants as a gun club. And once they release the pheasants, they stay out there. They don't you know, go back out and grab them. So that's a predator's first meal, I would say, if nobody ends up taking them out, you know. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to spring, really.
Yeah, I think everybody's in that boat. That was I wanted to just kind of follow up on that point you made there about how the coyotes are even, you know, having a hard time, and all predators having a hard time dealing with this snow because we haven't had the thaws. And I actually was out on one of my properties yesterday checking some trail cameras, and I had my snowshoes on, and I noticed that even with my snowshoes on, I was sinking down into the snow pretty much, you know, up to my upper thigh area, and it was just an absolute struggle to get in there even with snowshoes on. So I'd have to think that, you know, all animals, you know, are having, you know, difficulty, you know, navigating through the snow, and are probably sticking to, you know, a very core trail system that they've got established, you know, in their winter yarding areas. And, you know, like I said, I would certainly agree that the coyotes even are probably, you know, like I said, hunkering down and just kind of, you know, looking forward to getting to spring themselves. And we have some guys up here that I know that also get out there and chase them down with the dogs this time of year. And of course, I know a couple of guys also from the central New York area. A buddy of mine, Chris, he has some good luck coyote hunting with calls, and he's actually hunting them primarily at night. I know he's got, you know, basically, I think it's a red or a green colored LED, like big, you know, spotlight that's mounted on top of his scope. And I know from talking to Chris, you know, he's always said that, you know, he's had more success hunting them at night. What's your experience with that? Have you had any experience with that, Justin? And or do you know anybody who's taken that approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say hunting at night is by far the best, you know, at success. Either early morning or right before dusk in the evening is a really good time as well. But I would say the majority of you know, multiple kills would come at night. You know, primarily because that is when those type of predators or animals are out hunting. That's when they're the most active, and I think that's the number one reason why you have more success at night, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just know for myself. I mean, when I do, you know, get into a little bit more, you know, coyote hunting, I'm probably going to start out, you know, said calling during the daytime hours with probably a Fox Pro or something, and then maybe, you know, just getting one of those, you know, one of those cattail decoys that kind of, you know, flicker and move around. So I'm going to probably start out with that approach, and, you know, see what kind of results I have from there. And then maybe, you know, dabble into the nighttime hunting, you know, a little bit later on, and based off the results that I get with the calling. But another thing that I know that we both wanted to touch on in this show is, and that's, you know, basically checking up on your gear and, you know, keeping your eyes peeled for new gear that's hitting the market. And I guess, you know, kind of what I mean by, you know, checking up on your gear is, you know, I just think this is a good time of year to, you know, to check over all your tree stands, make sure that all your cables and your bolts and all that's, you know, secured, and that you don't have any issues with, you know, safety the next season. So, you know, this is a good time of year to, you know, oil up those tree stands, check all your straps, make sure that you don't have, you know, issues with your straps. If you do, this is a good time of year to, you know, replace those. So that's a good thing you can do this time of year. And I also like to use this time of year to, you know, keep an eye on, you know, a couple of the various outdoor sporting goods shows and other, you know, retailer websites to, you know, eye up some good deals and some good products that are coming out for the upcoming season. What do you do this time of year in that regards?
Oh, well, you bring up the thought of the tree stands and either oiling them up or checking the straps. I never leave a tree stand in the trees throughout the winter time. I think it's bad for the equipment, and you go to get in at the next fall, and you could worry about dry rot or rusting happening. I really, out of the tree stands that I do use, I primarily ground hunt now, with the bow even as well. But any tree stands that I do have set up, mostly for the times where I have a buck pattern in the summertime, I'll set those stands up early before season, and they're out either by gun season or by the end of deer season. So I have them in my garage, and I check them over, definitely check them over before the next time that I put them out. Now is even a good time to just go over your stuff. You're not really doing anything else outside. If you like to snowmobile or ski or do that sort of thing, then you may have other things to do. But I myself kind of just hibernate for the winter time, and whenever the snow comes down, I'm out clearing driveways and roofs off of investment properties and my own house as well. So it's a good time for me to get my rifles oiled up and make sure they're good and safe, and also my hunting gear such as tree stands as well. And I know you talked about looking for upcoming deer as well. I'm always looking for new improvements, I guess, in stuff. Not so much gimmick. I don't like the gimmicky stuff. I'm more of a just natural. I go for what's a nice camouflage that's out now. Not so much pattern, but what's a good clothing material that's out now that I can use to either shed sweat or maybe help with scent control, stuff like that. So I'm more into the useful gear, hand saws or pole saws, that type of stuff. The camouflage is another thing. Decoys is another thing, and calls. I prefer. I know you mentioned maybe getting a decoy and a Fox Pro. I have a Fox Pro. I don't have a decoy, but I've noticed between mouth calls and the Fox Pro, they both have their uses. I've had at times where I've used a mouth call for coyotes and called them in within 100 yards, and then they just sit down and they listen, and they won't come in, they won't commit, And then I turn on the Fox Pro, and within 30 seconds, I got a coyote within 30 yards of me. So I definitely say go for the Fox Pro or a similar type of electronic call. They have some really good sounds out nowadays. But don't be afraid of learning some mouth calling techniques, because sometimes the predators will learn from the electronic calls, and they won't come into that. But if you throw them a mouth call sequence, they just might commit to you. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, like I said, my buddy Chris, he does a lot of coyote hunting. In fact, I actually kind of pick on him every now and then. I actually kind of say that, it seems like he'd rather, coyote hunt than he would deer hunt. But, he does a lot of coyote hunting, and he has a lot of success with it. And I know he told me that if you can get good at the mouth calls, that's, in his opinion, it's the best way to go, because, he actually mentioned how, coyotes will almost kind of learn that exact sequence of how that electronic call is going, and how, like I said, they get to where they won't commit. And I know Chris, he likes to vary his mouth calls, and I just know he said he's had more luck, with the mouth calling, although he's got a lot of experience doing that. I think if you're the person who's just getting into coyote hunting, or certainly not a seasoned coyote hunter, I think you might want to probably gravitate to one of those electronic calls, just because you're probably going to get some more realistic sounds, out of that, as opposed to trying to, learn how to mouth call on the fly. But following up what you talked about as far as the gear, kind of what I do is, once our season ends, pretty much all the gear that I'm not planning on using anymore, as far as my clothing. I like to, take this winter time to, check it all over, make sure I don't have any rips or tears, and if I do, I'll either address those or maybe put that on the replacement list. And I like to, get all my bags and all my backpacks and all my gear, get that all re-washed in the Scent-Away detergent. And the reason why I do it pretty much right after season is because, all throughout the fall, I'm pretty anal, I guess you'd say, when it comes to the scent control. And I wash from pretty much September right through until the end of season. Everything I wash, even my own personal clothing, I wash everything in the Scent-Away detergent from September right through the close of season, no matter what I'm washing. So, because my washer is obviously, doesn't have any, detergent odors at that point, I like to, get all my stuff re-washed before I start, using the regular detergent later on in the winter after season. So I just find that if you can get everything re-washed and repackaged right after season, that's just one less thing you've got to worry about, come next summer or next spring even. And so I like to do that. Now, I know that you mentioned that you never leave a tree stand up. I wish I could say the same, but in all honesty, I do have some tree stands that I've had in the trees now for quite a while. But the one thing that I will state on that, which is extremely important if you're anybody that keeps tree stands out, is every summer, late summer, within a few weeks or a month of the season, I visit all those tree stands and I make sure I've got at least one brand new ratchet strap, on that tree stand to make sure that it's not going to fall. And in some cases, I've even got, two straps or, one ratchet strap and, a piece of rope that I'll even, throw around there and tie on. And on some of my tree stands now that I've had in the woods for, 4 or 5 seasons, I've got probably 5-6 different straps on these tree stands because I just keep on adding them. And on some of those, they're getting to the point where I'm going to have to either, remove those tree stands or, figure out some other way to get them down because the trees are actually almost kind of growing around the tree stand almost. So that's kind of what I've done up here. Like I said, as far as new gear, there's a couple of decoys that I've actually been keeping my eye out on this spring for turkey hunting. I've got one of the heads-up decoys currently that I actually really like, and the reason why I like that is because it's basically just a silhouette decoy, and it's a 2-dimensional silhouette decoy, and you attach a real tail fan on there, and it's a very portable, very mobile, very lightweight decoy that you can run and gun with and pretty much set up anywhere. I actually have that decoy attached to just an old carbon arrow because I made that modification to it because I just didn't like the post that came with the heads-up decoy from the factory. So I actually rigged it up on an old carbon arrow, and I plan on doing a lot of running and gunning this spring and just being able to quickly stake in that silhouette decoy and hopefully bring in some turkeys. Do you got your eyes on any upcoming turkey gear for this spring, Justin?
I think just a decoy, Chad. I got pretty much everything else I need that I use, and I've had really good luck the past couple of years up in Herkimer County. It's all woods, forest land. There's no agriculture there, and I found it very interesting to see some really good turkeys, coming into the area there. And last year, my uncle and I were able to call in a real nice 20-pounder with a 9.5-inch beard. And I'm really excited to keep going up there and hopefully tag something. There's always turkeys down here in the Hudson Valley where I live now, and it's I got most of my gear set up already that I typically use, and I'm just looking at maybe getting a new decoy or two, and just really practicing my calls throughout the end of winter here, getting ready for spring. make sure all my gear is ready, and I really can't wait. I get real excited in April. Sometimes I wish that they opened the season in April. The fields start opening up, and you see these toms out full fan on your way to work in the morning. It just gets you really ramped up for May 1st to come around. How about you, Chad?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in fact, I was going to say, I wish that New York would open their turkey season around mid-April because, in my opinion, from what I've seen the last handful of years, as far as I'm concerned, that's like the absolute best time to be out there in the woods up here is middle of April. It seems like the turkeys are going crazy that time of year.
Yeah.
For sure. But now, Justin, another thing that we wanted to touch on is, and I think it's an important thing to address this time of year, during the off season, and that's, either reaffirming or acquiring new permission. And I think the reason for that is because, this time of year, it's winter time. Most landowners, if they're not hunters, have got other things on their minds. And I just think that this is a good time of year to approach, prospective landowners about either getting new permission, if it's a place that that you're interested in hunting, or, to reaffirm, next year's permission on a place that you've been hunting for the last couple of years. What's your opinion on asking for permission to hunt this time of year?
I think this time of year is a great time to, first of all, research properties, potential properties that you want to hunt. I do that a lot. I look at both tax maps and, the county that I'm in down here actually has a GIS system online through their county website that shows the properties, both an aerial view and tax map view, grid view that, you can see the boundaries of the land. You can find the owner's information, both, their name and address. I take that time to look at options. I also ask around to neighboring people that I may know, and just get a little bit of insight about the person. Are they somewhat susceptible to accepting of a hunter being on their property, or are they totally against it? That's some things I like to do is ask people around the area that I know personally, if they know these people, that you may potentially get permission for the future. So, I hunt a private estate now that's 420 acres, and it's plenty of land. But like I said, I believe in episode 5 we talked about that a little bit. That's mainly my archery season. I'm one of the only people that bow hunt this property. And then, there's a lot of guys, I'm in charge of all the permission there. And there's a lot of old timers that like to come in and gun hunt. And, they basically shoot the first deer that they see or any deer that they see to fill their freezer. So, I'm always researching new properties. I've gone out and asked permission, personally. It's hit or miss. You get some people that say, no, absolutely no hunting at all. There's some people that say, come back later in the summer and ask again. I've found that one thing is you want to do is be totally professional. Whether or not you want to take, your wife or your child with you, I think that maybe could help a little bit with granting permission if they see that, you may be wanting to, bring up your family or your child into the hunting scene. There's really some people that are totally against hunting at all. So you really just got to go with your gut, ask around a little bit, be professional about it, show them references. I think that's a major thing too is, if you can go there with maybe somewhat of a resume type thing, or, you definitely want to be professional about it. And if they say no, it's, you just accept that answer and move on. But I think having some references in line, local references would be the best. There are people that know you personally, but may also know them as well. So I think if you're going to reach out there, I think we should reach out closer to the areas that you hunt already. I think that's a good place to start. And ask those people that you hunt, on their properties already, and maybe find out through them if they may know some other landowners around that they're personal friends with that think that maybe you could get permission to hunt their properties as well. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, but this time of year would definitely be on my list of things to do for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is you can really never have enough places to hunt, and a couple of things that I wanted to add on this particular topic is, first of all, I mean, especially if you're the guy that, doesn't own land. I mean, I'm fortunate that, I do have a couple of, properties that I own, that are mine, so I'm always going to have a place to hunt no matter what. But, if you're the guy that, has to hunt either just state land or only a couple of permission properties, I think one thing that you want to keep in mind is that, permission properties, you never know when that's, no longer going to be an option. Rather it's through, somebody's, selling the land, or, sometimes I notice one issue that seems to be common is, hunting rights are kind of dictated and change, due to a marriage in the family or something along those lines. So, I mean, this might be a place that you've hunted for the last, 5-10 years, but because, the landowner's daughter met a new guy and, he's a hunter, you've lost permission for that property now. So I think that, you never know, when a permission place is going to be yanked out from underneath you. So I think it's important to always be on the lookout for new places to, to combat, when those issues do arise. And a couple of tips I think would certainly help in, getting permission on properties would be, like you mentioned, I mean, maybe even construct, some kind of a resume, like you said, where you could just list on there, where you live, your phone number, what you did for work, and, maybe, some references and some phone numbers on some properties that you're already currently hunting, so that this person, if they wanted to, could, do a little bit of research about you. And I think that by giving them that resume, you're really probably standing out in the upper percentage of people that may be asking for permission, and you might be more able to have that landowner, give you permission because you're putting the effort into, trying to, presenting yourself in the best light possible. So, I mean, that certainly I think would be a great tip. Another thing that I would recommend doing would be, not showing up, to these places to ask permission, in really rundown clothes or in a pickup truck full of hunting stickers plastered all over it. Maybe bringing the family van over, and I'm not saying you got to wear a shirt and tie, but I just think dressing casually. I wouldn't recommend going there in your hunting camo and with face paint all on and stuff. So, and again, I mean, this time of year, most guys aren't going to be doing that anyway. So that's another reason why I think asking during the winter time can help out. So, I mean, there's certainly some things that you can do, and if you just put a little bit of thought, into how I'm going to go about asking for permission, I think you might be a little bit more inclined to get that. But, like we said, I mean, the bottom line is you can never have enough places to hunt, and asking for permission on new places is always a great way to find new hunting locations. And this kind of ties right into the next topic that I know we wanted to dive into a little bit, and that's out-of-state hunting. And I guess the way I wanted to kind of start out here was I just think this is a great time of year to plan those out-of-state trips. Rather that be going on to the state's DNR website and just looking over what their general hunting regulations are. Is this a state where you can get an over-the-counter tag, or do you have to apply in the springtime? So formulating a game plan for making that out-of-state hunting trip next fall, it certainly makes sense to take at least those initial steps here during the winter time. And maybe if you're going to be hunting state land, you can, like you mentioned, go on to the different aerial imagery, websites and resources, and you can look at prospective lands, try to narrow down a generalized area of where you want to start out hunting. But I'm actually planning on doing, I always go to Ohio every year, or at least I've been going the last, 4 or 5 seasons. It's a great state, and I'm a really big fan of, hunting new areas and new property. And so I'm always, like I said, on Google Earth or on Big Maps, and I'm looking at all these, new state land options down there in Ohio. And I actually want to branch out a little bit further west this coming fall. I'd like to hunt Indiana if I can get, if I can get time out there. I should be able to. But I mean, the bottom line here is, I just think that if you're the guy that's looking to branch out, hunt other states, or even hunt, further out in the state that you live now, it's certainly a good time of year to start formulating those game plans and lining up all the different criteria that you might have to get. What's your experience or opinions on these out-of-state hunting trips, Justin?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at trying to get out of state this fall. I haven't been out much, in the past. I've gone to Tennessee. I have family out there. I've gone out west in the springtime, but not for any big game hunts yet. I'm actually really interested in maybe seeing about getting a couple weeks off and venturing out with you, Chad, and looking at mostly picking states that are over-the-counter tags. Not so much maybe outfitter type hunts, but mostly, like you just mentioned, some state land, some public land areas that we may be able to find in those states. Not sure exactly how far west I would venture out to, but Indiana seems like a pretty good distance. There's, of course, really good hunting out in states like Nebraska, South Dakota. They all have over-the-counter, archery tags. And, if I had a chance to hit some state land in Ohio, if anything at all, I would like to at least get out to that state. I think their management is top notch in the past few years. They've been kind of a sleeper state, but there's been some really giant bucks coming out of there. So even on a state land point of view, So definitely looking at 2015, getting out. Not sure exactly how far west, but if you and I can hook up for a couple weeks and venture out there, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked about that in the past, and I'm sure we'll do more going forward. But I mean, the bottom line is, there's a lot of awesome hunting opportunities out there in other states, and the earlier you formulate these game plans and what you have to do to get out there, and maybe say rather that be saving money this time of year to accommodate that trip, or like I said, just formulating the basic game plan of where you want to hunt, how you want to do it, maybe checking into hotels in these areas. The one thing I will say is that, I have been on, 3 or 4 outfitted hunts in Ohio, and I've also been on a couple of state land hunting trips in Ohio, and, from what I've seen, there's obviously some great outfitters out there that, will do, their very best to put you on a quality hunt. But if you're willing to, put in that research and, and really put in the time and effort to locate, good hunting areas out of state on state land, in my opinion, you can find just as good a hunting on state land in a lot of these other states. And for the price tag it would cost you, to do that, 4 or 5 day hunt with an outfitter, for pretty much that same price, you can go out of state and you can hunt state land for, double, almost triple the amount of days. So I just know for myself, I'm looking more, for the state land options from now on. I've had some good experiences with outfitters. In fact, the biggest buck I've ever killed came my first year ever hunting with Buckeye Outfitters of Ohio down there in central Ohio. So I'm not going to say anything bad about choosing an outfitter, but I just think, I just know for myself that when you factor in, price of these hunts and how much hunting time you get, boy, I just think a guy can do, just as well, putting in the effort into, planning up a well-prepared DIY state land hunt. So I'm certainly going to be, divulging a lot of time this summer and this spring to formulating my game plan, for that. And Justin, the way I wanted to kind of end this show, because we're getting kind of close on time here, is I thought maybe we could both kind of touch on our 2015 hunting goals as kind of an updated goal list, because mine have actually kind of changed here over the last few months. What are your goals as it sits here? Mid-February 2015. What are your goals for this season?
Well, my first goal is to get out of the dead of winter here and get primed up for turkey season. Of course, hoping to have some good success at a nice long beard or two, and hunting with some family and friends, and then basically getting the cameras out full force, patterning the oldest, biggest buck that I can here, on the properties that I do hunt. Down here in the Hudson Valley and up in Herkimer County. So we're looking into, hopefully patterning those deer, especially down here in the southern tier, getting in first week of archery and hopefully capitalizing on that, all that summer work and time that I put into, keeping track of the cameras and stuff. Of course, this year I want to try and do some food plot stuff. So that's another thing, especially up in the northern zone. That's another thing I want to tackle to try to boost success for myself and my family up there as well. So that's one of my goals as far as staying local in the state. And I don't plan on maybe doing much hunting up in the northern zone until the guns start going off here. But that's in the past seasons, that's the time that I've noticed has been the best hunting up there anyway. So that's my goal for New York here in 2015. And, of course, if I get a couple weeks to venture out west, just hitting the state land parts out there, if you and I get to go out there together, of course, you already have some experience there with some state land properties and kind of got your feelers out there as far as where you've been seeing the most sign and stuff. And, if we get to get together even too and research some stuff this spring and summer for new places to go. We mentioned in episode 5 about taking advantage of the aerial imaging, Google Maps, Bing Maps, doing the aerial views, differentiate state land versus just regular private owned properties. A lot of the state land properties are shaded and well marked on those sites. So if we can research out some other properties to go and try our hand at, that's another goal that I would set forth too. So, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, and hoping for another successful season here with Vantage Point Outdoors.
Yeah, very cool. It sounds like you got a busy spring and summer ahead of you. I just know for myself, anybody who's obviously been following along with the podcast or said on the Vantage Point Outdoors page knows that, effective pretty much, mid-season last year, I've, made the decision to at least bow hunt primarily, or 100% now with the traditional equipment. So, with that change, I'm actually I'm very strongly considering lowering my expectations here in New York, at least, because the last handful of years I've been very committed to trying to target that 3.5-year-old or older buck, and it's not impossible to do here, but it's very difficult. And with having made the switch to traditional gear, I want to get a few animals under my belt. So come 2015, I'm not going to shoot the first buck that walks by, but that first decent 2.5-year-old buck is probably going to be in trouble this year, or at least I hope to think he's going to be. And I certainly want to target a couple of mature does up here in New York. I actually passed up several opportunities last year in 2014, but this year I'm not planning on passing up those opportunities. So I want to get a little bit of experience and some success under my belt with the traditional bows. And in my opinion, getting some early success is going to be paramount in keeping my motivation level high to continue with it. So I certainly want to have some success there. For spring turkey season, I'm still kind of on the fence or kind of flip-flopping to if I'm going to try getting the first one with the 12 gauge or not. I didn't kill a bird last year and certainly could have if I would have been 12 gauge hunting. So I'm probably going to look to get the first one with the 12 gauge, and then the second one I'll be pretty much all hands on deck with the trad bows. So I've got that going on, and you know, like you mentioned, like we talked about earlier, I'm definitely going to be getting out on some out-of-state hunting trips. Don't know exactly, you know, which states those will be, but I should be formulating. I should, you know, kind of know when my vacations this year will be. Kind of, you know, usually by mid-June I kind of know, you know, when my vacation time is going to line up for the fall. So once I know that, I'll certainly start, you know, thinking more and putting more energy into, you know, finalizing some plans for this coming fall on my out-of-state trips. Of course, once the spring breaks, I'll be, you know, ramping up the food plots here on my properties up here in northern New York. I've got probably a dozen different food plots now that I've got to tend to, so I want to keep those going because I have been seeing some results the last couple of years with the food plots. So, I mean, I've got a pretty busy, you know, spring, summer ahead of me too, and I'm looking forward to, you know, just sharing the stories here in the podcast, and hopefully this year we can share some success stories. But this episode has been very fun. Justin, I thank you for taking the time once again to come on and have this discussion with me. But we're pretty much up on time. Do you have anything to add before we close out today's show?
Well, I'm just want to say I'm super excited for you going with the traditional route. I wish you great success this spring with that. You know, over the next couple weeks, I'd like to hear about your new Dwyer bow setup that you're going to be getting. I know I've talked to you a little bit about your whip that Denny Mears had set up for you, and you know, just some info that you might be able to throw my way to help you know, kick me into the traditional archery sway here. So with that, you know, I just want to say, you know, I think you got a great show going on here, and I appreciate you inviting me on to be a part of it. So that's about all I got.
Okay, very good, Justin. I mean, I certainly will, you know, pass on that information to you, and I'll, you know, talk about that in future shows here on the podcast. But all right, well, I'll look forward to talking to you in a few weeks for another show.
You got it, Chad. Stay warm up there, all right, buddy?
Yeah, you too. Spring's coming.
All right, we'll talk to you, Chad. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll see you. Bye. All right, guys, well, there you have it. A look back at my recent discussion with teammate Justin Vickers, where we discussed some more things that you can do during the off-season to not only get you outdoors, help keep you in shape, and get you through this brutal wintertime period, but also some things that you can do that can help cement the foundation for a successful next season. As always, I want to thank everybody who tuned into this week's show. I will see you next weekend right here on an all-new episode of the Tradcast.